Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Call She Confessions. Today's episode is a little different, but probably my most special episode yet. Usually on Call She Confessions, I interview people behind the scenes of the entertainment industry. But today, my guest is someone who's been behind the scenes since the beginning of my life. He is the creator of 76ers basketball camps and one of the biggest influences on myself and my family. My guest today also happens to be my grandfather. Please welcome Sonny Elia, a.k.a. my Poppy, to the podcast. Welcome, Pop.
Well, thank you.
Of course.
Very special to be here. And I have to say, before we even get started, that shout out to you for what you've accomplished in the last 6 months. I mean, to be able to do this 30 weeks in a row and have a guest and get behind the scenes. And I mean, I've learned so much just by following your podcast. I never knew so much about what went on behind the scenes.
Yeah.
So really, it's a tribute to you and what you've done in a very short time.
Thanks, Pop.
I think the future is great for you.
Thanks. I'm excited, so excited to have you on and talk about some of the things you've implemented in me that I think has made me as successful as I am today.
Hey, and hopefully I didn't forget too many of them.
So let's take it all the way back, Pop. What was it like growing up in Philly?
Growing up in Philly was great because you never knew what you had or didn't have. You thought everybody had the same thing because the only people you were really involved with were the people in your neighborhood. And it was your neighborhood, you know, your street, your couple of blocks, your whatever. So that's how it really started. And I take it back to even then, that's why, you know, my parents married somebody from the neighborhood.
Yeah.
You know, their parents married somebody even closer probably. And it's spread out now. Now you meet people from other countries, other cities, you know, wherever. But back then it was very concentrated to your street or a couple of streets.
Yeah. Something that you told me too is that growing up it was like go out and play.
Oh, that, you know, we could never say that to our children or our grandchildren. Yeah. You know, you couldn't go out by yourself. But when we were growing up, I mean, my mother used to say, go out and play. And it was nothing else. Just go out and play. She didn't know where I was going, what I was doing. She just knew I was with the kids in the street. And that's who we were with. But that's basically how it started. And then when you were by 8 years old and you had a bicycle, then you could spread out a couple blocks, you know, and go a little more. But that's how it started. And very concentrated, everything.
Yeah. So when did sports start to come into your life?
Sports immediately, because I would watch, what we would do would be to watch the kids on the street. And we had a field next to our house where you could go over and play. So during baseball season, we went out with the balls and the gloves and did that. And we switched sports by season. And what was great for me was I had a lot of older kids on the block that I lived on. So I was following them and doing what they were doing and learned from them. Mm-hmm. And that's how I got indoctrinated basically to sports. And I loved them all, loved all the sports.
What made you fall in love with all the sports and which became your favorite?
Well, my best sport was baseball, which I played through high school and college as well. But my passion was basketball. For some reason, I just loved basketball. And I think it probably had to do with Wilt Chamberlain, who, when they talk about the GOAT, to me, he was the GOAT, the greatest of all time. There was just nobody that could compare to Wilt. And I still feel that way. Jordan, LeBron, they're great, but he could do things that nobody else could do. And you just knew you were witnessing something really special during his career.
Yeah.
So that's what got me started and following it. And I had a short career with it, but I followed it very closely. And even when I went to college, I went to Louisville, which was a basketball school, mainly known for their basketball, and made a lot of friends there, people on the basketball team that turned pro, that also turned pro. One is actually in the Hall of Fame that people wouldn't know. His name was Wes Unseld, passed away a few years ago. But that was really enjoyable. So if you want to go to the next step, if you're thinking about that, the next step was when I got out of college and didn't really know what I wanted to do or what I was going to do for sure. I had worked a couple summers at my dear friend's uncle's summer camp, which was a boys and girls summer camp, all the different activities, things like that. And I worked there as a counselor, and then I worked there as a assistant director. And what basically happened was after that last summer, I didn't know what I was going to do. And all of a sudden it became clear because one of my friends said to me, why don't you substitute teach until you know what you want to do or try that? So I said, oh, I could do that. And then this friend of mine whose uncle owned the camp called me and another guy. And he said, listen, I'm going to be getting out of the business. And I was only 21, 22 years old. He says, I'm going to be getting out of the business in a few years. And I'd like to know if you guys would be interested in buying the camp. And to me, that sounded great because I had no money. I had no nothing. I had no experience with it other than working for him. How do you do this? So I thought he was making us a deal that was just the best because I didn't have money. How was I going to do this? So what he said was, I'm going to keep the camp for about 3 years, and you guys could save the money you need for a down payment, and then you can take over in 1971. It's a lifetime ago. But, so what happened was, what we didn't know is because we trusted this guy so much, we didn't know that he was going to run the camp down over the next 3 years. And by the time we got in, we had all these maintenance projects we had to do and things we had to do, which made it like swimming upstream for several years until we were able to get out of it. But being the loyal person and dedicated person and not quitting on it, we just stuck with it and tried to get it done.
So at Louisville, you were also a college athlete. You played baseball there. Yeah. Going from being a college athlete to then working as a teacher in a school, what was that transition like?
Well, it was easy, and I kind of really loved it initially because I was also able to coach. And coaching kids I loved being around kids all the time. And coaching kids was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it. Then I coached basketball and,
There were two things I remember you telling me growing up that you really instilled as a coach in your players. One was that you told them if they didn't come back at the end of the summer better than they were before summer, that they weren't going to make the team. Two, I remember you told me you would lock the door so that like when practice started, so if they were late, they would know not to show up late anymore.
That was very important to me because we didn't have the facilities at the school to practice like after school, like most places did. So when I was the JV coach, it wasn't the varsity, they would say, well, you need to practice in the morning. So before school, so that was 7 o'clock. And trying to get kids, from the inner city to get to school at 7 o'clock in the morning was tough. But they all wanted to play basketball so much. And the kids would be there. And I would say to them, listen, 7 o'clock is when we start. I got to get up to be here. You got to get up to be here. If you're knocking on the door at 7:05, we're already practicing. So you may as well go home or just wait because you're not getting in. And I'll tell you, it took a couple of weeks, but the kids all fell in line. They were terrific, and it was a pleasure coaching them. And we did very well because they were disciplined and understood, what they needed to do.
Yeah.
So I really enjoyed that early on.
And I think, being a coach and working in a school and being around kids and being that, like, influential figure in their life, then you started working the camps with a bunch of kids, and that experience kind of translated.
It all fell together. And there were a lot of teachers at the time that owned summer camps, but none of them were sports camps or basketball camps. We were the beginning of that. There were some camps on college campuses. There were a few, but what we tried to sell as our thing was that we're not on a college campus. We have things for the kids to do when they come off the basketball courts or come out of the pool or come, whatever. We have a lot of activities for them, and which is different than when you're on a college campus and you either play basketball in the gym or go back to your dorm room. So that was our selling point. Unfortunately, it didn't catch on for about 10 years until all of a sudden I made a deal with the 76ers to run Sixers camps. And
before that, it was Mr. Basketball and Superstar Soccer.
Yeah, Mr. Basketball, Superstar Soccer. And we did okay. I mean, we had some pros that came, but there was so much to do to the facility that we weren't making, money. So
how, during all those initial challenges of the maintenance issues, how did you keep going, have the courage to keep going and believe in the idea, even though all those problems had
I learned to do a lot of the maintenance myself and my partner. And we did what we could. We did a little bit this year, a little bit next year. We borrowed money. I remember the first thing we borrowed money for was when we wanted to be a basketball camp. We borrowed money to put two new basketball courts in, thinking they would be, maybe we need about $5,000 to do this. Back then, even, it was like $30,000 to do it, which was huge, huge. So anyway, so we did that stuff, and by the time we did that, we were in a position to negotiate with the Sixers. And what they said was, they initially turned me down. And I found out that it was more about a better offer to them, guaranteed up front. And then the following year, we got what's called a license deal for 3 years to be able to use their name. And then after that, whatever. So the 3 years went really well. They loved what we were doing. The players liked it. A lot of them did. And we said, you know what, we got to do something with this. And I found out that other people wanted to offer them a better deal than I did. So the deal I made was that they would buy out my former partner, and I would become partners with them.
Yeah.
In the camps, not the Sixers. They owned the Sixers. This is in the camps. And as soon as we did that, it just took off. And it was different when you would call a prospective camper and say, oh, I'm Sonny Elia, I'm calling from, Mr. Basketball or whatever camp, and would like to tell you about our camp. They'd say, well, thanks for calling. We'll call you back, if we're interested.
Yeah.
Well, all of a sudden, when you called and you said you were from the Sixers, Mom, the Sixers guy's on the phone, hurry up, and people wanted to talk to you.
Yeah.
So that was the beginning of it.
Yeah.
And
that your initial business partner, you were very close friends, but at some point things weren't working. How did you know it was time to cut ties, and what are some qualities that aspiring entrepreneurs should look for in a business partner?
Well, that's a great question. And when you haven't had the experience, you really don't know the qualities, and it's basically about the loyalty. And I got hurt in a few times, doing certain things, but I learned to understand that business was business, and it was different than friendships growing up. Mm-hmm. People in business didn't always, I'm not talking about him, I'm just talking in general, didn't always tell you the truth when they had an ulterior motive,
Yeah.
I remember the times when this one guy particularly tried to get the deal with the Sixers and kept saying bad things about what we were doing and what I was doing and this and that, and it really didn't go very well. But everybody knew it wasn't true, that knew me and knew the Sixers and knew what we were doing. So they actually banned him from the building down there. Yeah, they banned this guy from the building. And so that was the beginning of it. And it just became, I was doing the same thing I had been doing for 10 years, but all of a sudden we had a name now to identify with. And it became fun. It
took 10 years for it to start really taking off.
Yeah, because we were behind the game, and I came to the reality in like 1982, whatever, after 10 years, that, you know what, I can't do this way. So I was going to sell the camp for whatever I could get and just move on. I was still teaching. And so I came home from school one day and I said, I'm going to write a few letters. And I wrote two to other camp owners to see if they'd be interested in buying it.
Wow.
And I wrote one to the Sixers, not thinking they'd ever get back to me. They actually got back to me the next day, and the general manager said, Harold Katz, who was the owner of the team at the time, is interested in what you have in mind. We'd like to talk about it. So that was the beginning. And then they turned me down. And I was crushed because I thought this was the beginning of something. And I found out that the reason they turned me down was, here I was talking to an owner of a team, and all I was telling him was I would give him a percentage of how much money came in. But what he wanted was guarantee. He wanted to know that I was really into the game and going to guarantee something. So we changed it, and we were fortunate to get a deal. And then his son became very involved with me, and to his credit, was an unbelievable help and aid to what we were doing, and made a lot of things happen that I almost couldn't do.
Yeah.
I mean, we had such opportunities come our way. And then we went from that to starting day camps. I said, well, if we could do an overnight camp, why can't we do day camps in the area? So we started renting schools out. And I'm laughing thinking about how we used to try and get players to 3 different camps in a day. and Mom and our Uncle Eric, they would drive, and there was no Waze, and the players would call and they go, where the hell am I? I can't find this place, So one way or another, we got it done. We got them there. The kids had a great time because all they really wanted was a picture and an autograph, mostly, with a player.
As a lifelong Sixers fan, born and raised in Philadelphia, now getting to work so closely with the Sixers, what was that like, having these players a part of what you're doing?
Unbelievable. I mean, it was so much fun because, I was looking at it from 2 sides, from the side of being a business person, trying to do a business, and from the side that these guys were guys I always looked up to and loved and admired. I mean, I was a huge, huge, huge fan, and I still am.
Yeah.
So that was unbelievable. And what happened that was incredible was 1985 was the first year that we had the 3-year license deal, and Charles Barkley was a rookie, and we became fast friends, and it was just. It was like everything was meant to be.
Yeah.
And we just started getting kids from all over. And then one year, a few years ago, we had all these ideas. And you know what? All of a sudden, they were all working, which didn't happen before. So we had this idea. There was a player by the name of Rick Mahorn, and he was on the Sixers, and pretty famous player at the time.
Yeah.
And Charles was on the team, and they were referred to as Thump and Bump. And they had these T-shirts printed, Thump and Bump T-shirts, with Charles and Rick Mahorn and everything. So then I came up with this idea. Why don't we have a Thump and Bump camp? It'll be a 2-week camp. 1 week Charles will be there, and the other week Rick will be there. Let's see how it goes.
Yeah.
So we were able to charge a very nice fee for it because they would be there, and it sold out in like I mean, I don't know, like a month or a few weeks or whatever, it was like sold out. And so it was all good stuff that happened.
Yeah.
And it became fun because we were building something. So then we started, after the day camps, we said, oh, we could do dance camps. Let's try the dance camps. And well, I didn't say it. They actually called me
Yeah.
to offer that opportunity to me. So we tried the dance camps, which you got into at a
Yeah.
very early age. And
Yeah, I always think it's funny.
and it was all fun doing that kind of stuff because it was an opportunity. I had finally learned how to put things together, but also make money from them
Yeah.
and make a living from it instead of just being, as my accountant used to say, you're a hobby. You know, he did us as a hobby. But that's how it all started. And I mean, it grew to a point to where we were having groups of kids coming from Jordan, Israel, Egypt, Turkey, not Venezuela.
But all
Oh my
over.
God, there were like 30 different countries
Yeah.
that kids were coming from.
And it's so funny because my sister Ariel ended up becoming a basketball player, and she would do the basketball camps. I did the basketball camp once too, but I fell in love with the dance camps. And no one in our family ever really danced before me. So I think, I always wonder if I would have ended up getting into dance without your influence, without the dance camps. But one of my favorite stories is at dance camp. There was like a half day for the younger kids, and the older girls could stay the full day. So I did like the half day camp, and you came to pick me up after the half day, and I was like, Pop, I want to stay. Like, I want to stay the full day with the older girls. I was like not ready to leave. And I wanted you to ask, my dance teacher if I could stay. And you said, if you want to stay, you have to ask for yourself. If you want something, you have to go ask for it. And I went over and I asked, and I got to stay the full day, and I was so excited, and I was a beat behind, but I just loved being there. And that lesson in advocating for yourself that you taught me right in that moment, I have absolutely carried with me throughout life.
Well, I see it now as an adult.
Yeah.
I see it. You have a confidence about you that developed over the years, and early on it was suspect, so to speak.
Yeah.
And it came on to where you just developed that confidence and understood that you had to be out there yourself. And that's what you're doing now. That's what I see that you're doing now, which is such a pleasure to see. And the rewards will come. They will come.
Yeah.
If anybody knows that, I do, but the rewards will come.
From your mouth to God's ears.
Yeah, as they say.
So, as the director of camp, what did your day-to-day look like?
Your mom could tell you. They were like 24-hour days. You had to,
Wow.
at the overnight camp, you had to sleep with one eye open because at 1 or 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, you were going to get a call, some kid's sick in the cabin, or this happened, or that happened, or whatever. Somebody's walking in their sleep,
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, crazy things. So you had 12 weeks up there that of which 8 weeks camp was actually open. A few weeks before, a few weeks. You had basically 10, 12 weeks up there that you were on the go every day, because you were the person.
Yeah.
Everything stopped at you. So you had to be available for everything.
Yeah.
And
growing up, you had a very happy childhood, and you played a lot of sports. But one thing I know you mentioned is your dad wasn't able to always make it to your games.
life was really different back then. If you go back, I mean, the families then, they literally had to be at work from whatever time they were told they had to work. They had to work. So they didn't have time to come watch a game and see this and see that. So, my dad never saw me pitch a game in high school until like the very end of a season.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden he got excited, about it. And my mom, she was a homemaker,
Yeah.
She said, that's what it was like then.
Yeah.
And
How did that shape the type of father and grandfather you wanted to be, and being the person that had to be available all the time, working 24 hours, how did you balance family time and work?
The toughest thing was when raising kids, your own kids.
Yeah.
I many times felt guilty that I couldn't be at certain events that our kids were going through because I was working basically 3 jobs for a long time with the camp. I was still coaching and teaching until I stopped teaching when things got really good. But I was doing the 3 jobs, and it was very, very difficult at that time to get to an event. Mom played lacrosse and what else did you play? Hockey, field hockey, my favorite sport.
Yeah, I remember Mom tried to put me in lacrosse or field hockey, and I refused. I refused.
I couldn't believe, I couldn't get to games to go see, and Uncle Eric, he played soccer, but I couldn't get to those things. On weekends and stuff I did, or when it was in school I did, but couldn't get to it. And me, because family came first, I felt guilty that anything I couldn't be at that involved family. So the real pleasure was that I was able to retire at a relatively early age. I was still in my 60s, so I was able to really appreciate you guys growing up. And I mean, all the things that we did together, I cherish those things that we were able to do that I couldn't do with my grandsons that live on the West Coast.
Yeah.
But they chose to live on the West Coast,
Yeah.
And that was it. But
I think something that was cool, though, like Mom worked at the camp, Mimi worked at the camp, Uncle Eric, like you were able to kind of then combine work and family in that way.
Well, that's one of the things that, I appreciate. And I give Mimi a lot of credit also because, not that I tell her often, but early on, I mean, she stuck with me with all this stuff. The way we had to live at camp and what we had to do and stuff was tough, at least relatively tough. And she was always there, and whatever I needed. And she was a big help getting stuff done over the years. But it was interesting how the whole family got involved.
Yeah.
And if I stayed in the business, you guys would have been running camp today.
Yes. And I remember when you sold the business that I said to you, like, you didn't even ask me first.
So just to be clear, anybody that might be watching or listening or whatever, I didn't, my partnership with the Sixers was for the camps.
Yeah, right.
And they became my partner in the camps.
Yeah.
I didn't own any part of the Sixers.
Right.
So what happened is when our deal was done with the NBA and the owner sold the team to another group, we had to work out an exit strategy.
Yeah.
So the exit strategy became 2012, initially 2008, then 2012. And then I said, you know what? I'm not going to try and do a new deal now and do this and do that. It's done. And fortunately, we found somebody to buy the facility that's actually done so much with it. It's wonderful. It's got a wonderful camp there now. And not that it wasn't before, but I mean, he's put lots of money into it, thriving. And that's what happened.
Yeah.
So it was a labor of love, but it worked out, and it took a long time, but it was great. And I mean, the word that was used, was at one time they called me from the Sixers the doctor of camping, Dr. Camp, because everything we always talked about family-wise, you couldn't say a sentence without the word camp in it, because that's what we were doing.
Yeah.
But we persevered. So.
With creating the 76ers basketball camps. What do you think made the 76ers trust you with their brand and their name?
Well, I knew a few people down there, and I had a reputation of having run camp for many years, and I knew a couple of the people down there. One who was the general manager fairly well, and they took a chance on me, and then when the owner's son got involved, he loved it. He was a young guy and loved it. And we're still close to today. I mean, I owe a lot to them and him in particular. So, but it was a good time. It was a great time.
Something I want to highlight, you said, your reputation. When I worked for the Sixers, there were some people around that had worked when you were there. And I asked them, about you or, brought you up, and they had nothing but good things to say about you, that you always had a smile on your face and you were always ready to work. And people would light up when I said huge smiles, or whenever I post about your birthday, I get so many messages from old dance teachers and from camp and from when I did the Sixers mini team growing up, of people being like, oh, your pop was always the best. Tell him I said happy birthday. And even, growing up and following you around at camps, I always joked that I felt like you were the mayor, of walking around. I felt
was Dr. Camp.
Yeah, you were Dr. Camp. I felt so cool and so proud to be your granddaughter, and still, absolutely feel that way.
Thank you.
How do you go about that becoming your reputation? Because you had all these problems to solve at camp. I'm sure you get frustrated with people at times. How do you keep your composure to where people have nothing but nice things to say about you?
It's tough sometimes.
Yeah.
And, in business particularly, you make a lot of mistakes, and you learn by those mistakes, because if you don't learn by them, then you're out of business very quickly. So I worked hard, and I always felt if you're honest with people and you tell them the truth, and whatever you're trying to do, and you get it done, if you make a mistake, they're more apt to listen to you. If you apologize for a mistake or move on to something else. That I guess it's just mainly trying to be honest. I mean, I mentioned to you, loyalty has always been one of my big things. Well, I guess I was loyal to a fault, with certain things. And I say to a fault because there were a couple of times where I felt I could have moved in another direction for my own personal, profit.
Yeah.
And I didn't do that because I felt loyal to somebody and had to stay with it. So, and if I had gotten started, had the success with the Sixers a little bit earlier in my career, we would have done a lot more. We had an offer through the Sixers. It wasn't mine that I got it. It was my idea, but we got it through the Sixers. To do NBA camps that were entitled NBA camps. And I was just too involved with so many camps and this and that to try and start something like that.
Yeah. And
at the time, because we started being successful, and I enjoyed that, and I didn't want to lose that.
Yeah.
So that was the bulk of it. And at one point, I had to make a decision. The big decision was, do I continue to teach, or do I devote all my time to camp? And I was very close to having enough years in to retire from teaching, but I wasn't there yet, and I needed about 4 or 5 more. But I had a chance with the Sixers with this long-term deal and everything else that I said, this is what I've been wanting all my life. This is what I really want to do.
Yeah.
So I left teaching, and I took the chance, and fortunately it worked out.
How'd you know it was a risk that was good to take?
Because we finally had been making money for some years now, And I always stayed on until I felt I was safe, and wanted to be safe. And I probably could have left a couple years before that, but, you give up a pension, you give up
Right.
retirement money and this and that. But it was worth the move at the time.
Yeah.
Scary, but it was worth the move.
Yeah. You grew up without much, and then you found real success with camp. You've said that one of your best skills is being good at managing money. How did you develop this skill?
Well, when you don't have any, the little bit that you get, you figure out how to make it go far.
Yeah.
And what to do with it. And that was probably the early thing, when I first started working. I had to put enough money to pay for this, enough money to pay for that, enough money. And then after a while, you finally, you learn how to do it, and you learn how to do it fairly well.
Mm-hmm.
And, I'll tell you one of the things I did that is really interesting, because you probably wouldn't believe it, but I'm telling you, this is true. When the owner's son came to work with the camps
Yeah.
and working with me, and we had salaries set up, and then the rest of the money bonuses, that we would get. So he comes to work with me in like March. He leaves the Sixers down there and comes work. When I say work with me, in our off, do our thing. And was working there a couple of months, and he says to me, son, he says, when do we get paid here? So I said, I didn't even think about that. I said, because frankly, what I do is, since it was a seasonal business, what I would do is I would wait to the end of the season. I would pay all my bills that I owed for the year, pay everybody that we owed. And then whatever was left, we just split it or took our, what we were supposed to take. That was the money.
Wow.
So I had that nobody could take that away from me. That was good for the year. I had to make that last the year. So when I started doing that and making it last a year, I said, this is pretty cool that I could do this and then wait till the summer's over to get paid and then not have to worry about money until the next year, So that's what I meant about managing money.
Yeah.
And that worked for me, where other people would just take their salary every week and do that.
Yeah. Or some people that come from nothing, when they start making real money, they'll spend it on, material things like the cars, the houses, like those type of things. How were you smart about the way that you spent your money?
Well, first thing was the kids, to make sure we had enough for the kids, for schools and everything else.
Yeah.
They were the big decisions that we had to make. And when I started teaching, I realized that, there were a lot of decisions to make, but if I could get into a business and do something, I can make more money, and do more. But it was a difficult time, teaching isn't a profession where you go in it for the money, and but I did really enjoy it for a long while. And matter of fact, I took Mom to school. We had a swimming pool at the school. We took her over and swam. I was in phys ed, so it was fun. I worked with a lot of great guys and women, and we just had a good time, for a lot of years. And that's how I got many of my staff in the summer, because they were all teachers, that I could get to work. So that was tough too, the staff part. But when you had somebody that was good, you really wanted to keep them, and that was tough to do sometimes.
Yeah. There were a lot of problems over the years that you had to solve, a lot of fires you had to put out. What were some of the biggest challenges you overcame?
Well, they challenges or decisions that I had to make. One, as I just told you a little while ago, was about leaving teaching.
Yeah.
Staying with business. Had to do that. One was about the partner I was involved with, how to change that. So that was a very big decision. And the other decisions were the starting of the other kinds of businesses, the dance camp, the day camps, and bringing kids in from so many different places. I mean, that was really difficult to arrange all of that stuff that they were coming in, because camp was located in the Poconos, which was in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
And to get from an airport to there wasn't easy all the time. So there were some of the tough decisions.
Yeah. Something you always say to me is like, throw enough things at the wall, something will stick. How did you come to live by that?
Because I made so many mistakes, and it took time till something, actually worked. I remember one time at camp, had a woman coach from, I forget what college, what university, and she was terrific. Worked for only worked a couple weeks in the summer, but was really terrific. And she said to me, I have to tell you something. This is what I want to do with my life. How do I get in this business? How do you start this? How do you do it? And I told her, I said, most coaches have started by running a camp at their camp, at their school, and then they branch out from there or develop that. I said, but, if you want to know how I got to this point, it's like I said to you, it's by making a lot of mistakes along the way and then correcting them.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, what I found out along the way was some of the people you trusted, you just shouldn't trust so much.
How do you know what to look out for?
Well, it's very difficult, and that's what comes with experience. I remember somebody saying to me, when I was much younger and he was older, said to me, the most important thing you could have is wisdom. He said, but the only thing is that wisdom only comes with age. You're not born with it. You can't manufacture it. It comes with age, and it's so true. So when you say that, throw enough stuff against the wall, because I threw a lot of stuff against the wall, and only a few things stuck. So that's how you know, if you keep trying. And it's the people that keep trying that finally get it. And there's no better feeling than hitting that home run, so to speak. For me, a home run, home run isn't the same for everybody, but for me, there were home runs after failing at certain things several times, and then hitting that home run, it feels unbelievable. It's a great feeling.
Yeah. What was one of the biggest mistakes that you made in business, and then that moment you hit that home run?
Trusting someone that was only out to take my business. And I thought this was someone I could really, really trust. And it's a long story with that, but that was my biggest mistake. And I didn't find that stuff out until later. And growing up, I just thought people told you something, they were honest, and they meant it. And that's what life was. I tell you this, and you do this, and whatever. But I didn't realize that there were people out to just take whatever you had because they felt that they could do it.
I think that's something I've learned too, that just because you're a genuine person and you walk in the world a certain way doesn't mean that other people are the same way or have the same intentions that you do.
You need to be cautious, especially when it comes to, monetary things.
Yeah.
You need to be cautious who's with you and who's not. And once again, unfortunately, you don't learn that right away growing up because you trust this person, you trust that person.
Yeah.
So that's my boring story about.
It's not boring at all. When you did approach the Sixers and you were negotiating and writing up deals, how did you know how to craft a deal, and how did you go about protecting yourself in business?
It's also a good question, and that's one that you learn. I learned how to write a letter. I mean, there was no internet back then or any of that. So I would read from, business proposals that people made, to do certain things. I would see other proposals. Not many, but I would pick up a few, just like you do a cover letter now, for something.
Yeah.
You're doing a resume. It was more like really a resume that you were doing because you were telling them what you could do and what experience you had. And one of the things I always did was I always said that I'm not going to make any letter too long. I'm going to because these guys, they don't want to read a whole bunch of stuff. They want you to get to the point and let them know what you want to do. And that's what I tried to do. I tried to make it short and sweet and get to the point. And that was it. And I mean, even the one with the Sixers, when they got back to me the next day, I couldn't believe that, that happened. That was the beginning of it. So.
Yeah, that's a good point, just kind of getting straight to what you're asking for. And a few people I've had on the podcast have mentioned that. And in college, like professors of mine, they would say, like, when you're writing emails or you're reaching out to people, don't make it an essay. Get to the point, why you're reaching out. Because then you're also taking someone's time to have to read through all of that. And you're reaching out to busy people. So kind of just like getting straight to the point without the fluff.
Get to the point and get to the numbers and just put it there, and let's talk more,
Yeah.
And that's it. And if you get past that first letter, you got a great chance. I'm thinking of a funny story. They won the championship the year we made the proposal to them. That was 1983. The Sixers won the championship. And a funny story was they had a guy by the name of Pat Williams, who was the general manager. And I remember when they called me in for the first meeting, and we were sitting there, and he had these, this is in Philly, he was a character, but he had these big cowboy boots on, right? And his feet were up on the table. And the other guy who was like a general, and I said, God, these are like regular people, and here I am all, dressed and whatever and proper, and he's got his feet up on the table. And the one question he said to me was, he said, so I got one question. You answer this question and we maybe have a deal. He says, how am I going to get Dr. J or Maurice Cheeks or whoever to come to camp in the summertime, to come up to the camp? I can't even get them to go to a supermarket for an appearance.
Yeah.
He says, how am I going to do that? How are you going to do that? I said, it might not be Dr. J. I said, but I've been doing it for 10 years, getting guys to come to camp, to drive up to the Poconos, and we pay them a modest salary to do it, and but they do because they enjoy doing it. So you try and get the guys that like doing it. And that's what we've done. So he was okay with that. And I said, I've been able to do it for 10 years, and I don't promise that Dr. J's going to be there or Allen Iverson or whoever it was back then. I said, we just say that we're going to have a couple people a week come up, during the week. And all the kids, like I said earlier, all the kids really wanted was an autograph and a picture. And, some kids today, have pictures that I'll occasionally get of a picture of a kid with a player like 40 years ago.
Yeah.
So that was good stuff.
Yeah, and it's so cool for the kids and so inspiring. They're going to a basketball camp, a sport that they love, especially if they're from Philly and they're Sixers fans, or even if they're from wherever, an NBA player to come to camp. Like, you're right next to someone you look up to so much. And to then even come home with an autograph, it's like, what a great time.
And most of the players were great. And there were some that were really they were like our guys because they would call us every year that they wanted to do the camps for the extra little bit of money or whatever, and they were great guys. So it turned out well.
So, Pop, you're on Call Sheet Confessions. What's your call sheet confession? This can be one of the problems that you solved, one of the crazy things that happened at camp.
Well, you could probably tell me crazy things that happened at camp. We had a small lake at camp, and we used to jet ski on the lake.
So much fun.
And as you say about hiring the family, Mom was the lifeguard.
Yeah. What a great job.
What a great summer job. Yeah. And she used to pray for the rain, though, so she didn't have to work. But anyway, we had a couple of jet skis on the lake. And that was another activity that the kids absolutely loved. So a former player, God rest his soul, he passed away some years ago, just a wonderful guy by the name of Armin Gilliam. And he was a good pro for a lot of years and a good person. And so he would come to camp all the time. And we had just gotten this brand new, literally, nobody drove it yet, the jet ski. And he comes to camp that day, and he says to me, "Oh, can I ride the jet ski?" I said, "We got a new jet ski." He says, "Oh, can I try it out?" And I said, "Sure." He literally drove the jet ski into the edge of the lake, the dike, and that was the last time the jet ski was used the whole summer. It was the first day of camp. We just got it. We literally just got it. Nobody had been on it. So it went in the shop for most of the summer. I think we got it back the last week of the summer. But that was a toughie. That was a real toughie. Here you are, you're all excited. You spend $6,000 for a jet ski, and a jet ski gets delivered, and it's all red and pretty, and you're excited. The kids are going to be jet skiing also, and you're like 5 minutes into camp, and it's gone for the summer. So
dang.
Yeah, that was one of my call sheet confessions. That one of the real toughy ones, and we had a few of those.
I remember you told me about the water.
Oh, we had
to shut
once
off the
where
water.
they had to bring a water buffalo in for water for the camp because they had to retest the water, that they thought they saw something in the water, so we couldn't drink the water. They could shower, they could do whatever, but they just couldn't drink it, so we had to bring it in for drinking. And it turned out it was okay.
Yeah.
So it was a few days that we had that. Then, of course, we had another one that was a killer, was you'd have a storm and you'd have a power outage. And I would call the power company and say, our campus, we have no power. Well, we're trying to get there. We'll get there when we can. I said, I got 200 kids that have no power, no light, no nothing. You got to. And till they would come, I'd be up all night until they would come and get out there and fix the transformer or whatever it was. So that was definitely one of the issues. And I remember this one, our first year in business, the guy who was my partner was also able to cook, and he was very good at it. So his wife didn't want him to be in the kitchen, so we hired a chef. And we met this guy and had experience, a lot of experience. But what I didn't know at the time was chefs are like strange. A lot of chefs are very, very strange, okay? So we hired this guy first week at camp, and he makes a couple of meals, right? Terrific. All's good. So we're talking, everything's fine. Dinner comes, and I look out the window, and I see him in his white chef's coat, right, that he's got on. He's walking down the road, leaving. He just walked out and left. And the guy who was my partner that could cook said, no problem, I got this, And we didn't miss a beat. But what would have happened if he wasn't there, I mean, you always had to have a backup some way, some kind of backup. So they were some of my call sheet confessions that happened early on.
I'm sure there were some kids that got in trouble, some campers that you might have had to tell to leave the camp for whatever reason. How did you go about that conversation with the parents?
That was one of the things I said, you got to be totally straight up.
Yeah.
And, I would always call the parents and let them know, Johnny was in a fight with somebody and this happened and he hit him and did this and we're going to have to send him home. Even though he's not a bad young man, this happened and we have a rule here and we have to stick to it, So we're going to send him home. But dealing with the parents was a skill because every parent thinks that their kid can do no wrong. I don't want to say every parent. Most parents feel that it's never their kid's fault if something happens, that they can do no wrong. I think I just told you this story the other day that I thought was one of my favorite stories. We had a kid come to camp, and before the parents were both professors at an Ivy League school. And before the kid came to camp, the mother drove up to camp and gave me, from a legal pad, like 3 pages of all the things and the issues the young man had to watch out for. So she said, do you think you can handle him with these things? I said, well, we can try. I said, some kids really function in this kind of environment, function well. So anyway, she signs him up, and the kid comes to camp, and I prepare the counselor, tell the counselor, watch out for this, watch out for that. I tell my director at the time, watch out for this. Everybody's on pins and needles because this kid we got to watch out for.
Yeah.
It turns out that the kid actually had a phenomenal week. There was nothing wrong with it. And I'd ask the counselors, what's he like in a cabin? He's fine in the cabin. He's having a ball, the kid. So I told the mother when she came to camp, I said, I've been running camp for a lot of years. I said, and I've watched your son this week because, you gave me all this information about him to watch out for. I said, and he functioned beautifully. I said, I saw him with kids having fun, smiling, playing, having a great time. He ended up coming back the next year. The kid came back for a couple of years and was a terrific kid. So sometimes parents, maybe as intelligent as they are or educated as they are, don't have a lot of experience dealing with young people, and they need to give their kids a chance to grow. That's probably one of the biggest pieces of advice I saw over the years. Your kid needs a chance to grow, you know, and you got to help them do that. So that was always very interesting. Yeah.
For aspiring business owners, entrepreneurs.
Don't go into the camping business.
You've taught me so many incredible lessons over the years and advice that I've carried with me, like always be the best you can be is one that I always remember and really live by. What advice do you have for others?
For business?
Yeah.
For doing that, just know that you're going to make mistakes and try to move on from them. But do your homework before, because you need to know what you're getting into, and especially what your first year can look like in the business. You know, what's the end of that year going to look like? Are you going to be in? You don't know whether you're going to lose money or what you're going to do, but you gotta be able to protect yourself.
Yeah.
And try and you got to have a business plan.
Yeah.
And the business plan, in my mind, okay, and this isn't everybody else because I learned from the mistakes, but the business plan is one that should protect you and help you move toward your goal after a year, 2 years, 3 years. It's one that you should be able to live with. Don't go into a business where you can lose a lot of money immediately, and or where you put too much trust in somebody you haven't worked with. I think there are two things that I would be very careful about.
Yeah. I want to ask you some quick hit questions. Okay. The first one is, what's one word people would use to describe you?
Loyal.
Yeah. That's a good one. What's one word you would use to describe yourself?
Careful.
And how excited are you about LeBron joining the Sixers?
Oh, I think it's great. Even if he were 50, I'd still like it. He's
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, I mean, people talk about the greatest of all time and this and that, and they always talk about Michael Jordan, and now they talk about LeBron because he's broken all the records. And here's a guy that's been in the league now for 24 years that has I've never read about one problem he's caused, any trouble he's been in. He's a great family man from everything I read. He's been great with his kids. He's great with his city. He's developed these foundations. I mean, he's just done a remarkable job. You can't say anything bad about the guy.
Yeah.
And so to be here for 2 years, even at 42 years old, I'm looking forward to it. I think it'll be fun.
I'm looking forward to it too. Pop, you built an incredible, successful business from a creative idea that you believed in, and you really made it something. You impacted thousands of kids. You raised an incredible family, and I'm so incredibly lucky to have you as my grandfather. When you look back on your life, what do you hope people remember most?
Oh, that I was a family man from the beginning, from the get-go. That I got from my father. I mean, my father, everything was family.
Yeah.
Whatever he couldn't do, but he was there for family. And when I say family, I'm talking extended family. Aunts and uncles, when he had nothing, he gave, he did. He was there for everybody. So I got that from him, and I just wanted to be something like he was in terms of family and be able to, and that's what I've done. I've tried to do. But the big part about it is, I've enjoyed it. Some people, they're a parent and they do what they have to do because they have to do it and this and that. The past 20 years, watching you guys grow up has been wonderful, It's been all the time that I spent with you.
Movies, mini golfing, batting cages.
Everything that we did. And, Mom needed me to take you to New York to go, you dancing here, you dancing. It's all right, we'll go.
And when you wouldn't be there, they'd be like, "Where's your puppy?"
Yeah.
Where's your
Yeah. My lady friends in New York, and it was like, have Pop, will travel, So we went wherever we needed to go. But I enjoyed it. As I always said to you, I saw every animated movie there was for about a 10-year period.
Yeah.
But we had good times, and I enjoyed it. And unfortunately, I couldn't do that with my grandsons because they were so far. But we did some of it, and we're gonna get a chance to do it again.
Yeah, I was gonna say we gotta wrap this up because we gotta get on that plane to Italy. Speaking of family, but we're gonna have an incredible trip. Everyone's in the family is gonna be there. This is
something I wanted to do 5 years ago, but COVID hit.
Yeah.
And then with 4 grandkids, you couldn't find a time that everybody was available or who's working or what's going on. And So that never transpired that we did it. But this is even better because you guys are older, you know. We're not dealing with little kids, and it's a great country to visit. So for all those people wondering what we're talking about, we're going on a family trip, and we're all looking forward to it.
Yes.
Haven't done it in years.
Well,
So,
thanks, Pop, for taking the time
Hey.
and coming on Call Sheet Confessions.
my pleasure. Hope I didn't bore too many people.
I hope
Well,
everyone knows what a real treat this is, because it took lots of convincing to get this man on the podcast.
You're doing a great job. Continued success, because
Thanks,
it is
Pop.
success, and I see it just growing. You're really good at it, and somebody's going to see you out there that's going to say, "Hey, Mia should be in front of my camera," you know, and doing this. So it'll happen. It'll happen.
Well, thanks, Pop, for coming on and just for everything. I would not be the person that I am today without you. And I feel really lucky that I've gotten to have so many people on this podcast that have been such incredible influences in my life. And you're definitely one of the biggest ones.
Well, thank you. Love you.
I love you too, Pop. Well, thank you, and thank you to everyone for watching this episode of Call She Confessions. Always make sure to work hard and chase the dream, because if your dreams don't scare you, they're not big enough. May your call times be reasonable and your checks be on time. And like my Mimi always says, break a leg, but not really. We'll see you next time. Bye.